Good afternoon. We acknowledge that the land on which we are learning, working, and gathering today is the ancestral home of the Yakomiko and Piscataway peoples. We also acknowledge that St. Mary's City was partly built and sustained by enslaved people of African descent. Through this acknowledgement, we recognize these communities and all those who have been displaced and enslaved through colonization. Given the unique importance of the land on which we sit, and given the unique educational mission of St. Mary's College of Maryland as the National Public Honors College, we pledge to continue to unearth and understand these historic realities so that they inform all of our work. We also pledge to work tirelessly in making our institution more accessible, inclusive, and equitable, especially for those populations most affected by societal inequities. We do this with the understanding that by supporting and learning from all of our diverse communities, we build a more sustainable future for all. I'm Tawanda Jordan, President of St. Mary's College of Maryland, the National Public Honors College. Yeah, you should do that. You know, one of these days I'm going to start my remarks, and when I say I'm Tawanda Jordan, you guys are going to say President of St. Mary's College, the National. You're going to do that one of these days. St. Mary's College of Maryland continues to work toward the more perfect union reflected in the U.S. Constitution. In August, our college initiated this land acknowledgement and pledge to be read at the start of each event and be displayed throughout our campus. I have often said that we are an institution that prepares students to be both thinkers and doers. This act is a prime example of that. It is an honor to welcome you to our annual Constitution Day lecture featuring the distinguished Congressman Jamie Raskin, a true Constitution scholar. After so many months of virtual classes and events, it is a joy to be able to share this experience in person with so many of you. Thank you for following our campus policies to continue to keep everyone safe when we gather. Today, we mark the adoption of the Constitution of the United States on this day in 1787, laying out what we, the people, can expect of our government. It's a time when we can broaden our knowledge of this powerful framework of self-government as constitutional issues confront our nation at every turn. For at a time when our country is deeply divided on so many issues, we must look deep, both within ourselves and with our founding principles. Importantly, our country's founders understood that free and open discussion is the cornerstone of democracy, and they enshrined our right to free speech in our Constitution. Free and open discussion is also the cornerstone of our college. That is how we learn. That is how we challenge our own ideas and open our minds. For our college's role is not to make people comfortable, it is to make them think. And so as we emerge from our months of isolation, there's no better way to begin our academic year than by taking time to reflect both on our foundational roots and on our roles and responsibilities as American citizens. For that is how, together, we will create real solutions for real problems. Let me now call on Dr. Antonio Uguez, Jr., the director of the Center for the Study of Democracy, an important partnership between the college and historic St. Mary's City that continually helps us explore contemporary and historical issues associated with democracy, liberty, and justice. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Uguez to the podium to introduce our honorable speaker. Tony.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. The Center for the Study of Democracy, a joint partnership of St. Mary's College of Maryland and historic St. Mary's City, is proud to host the annual Judge William O.E. Sterling Constitution Day Lecture. Our democracy rests not only on our foundational principles and institutions, but on our societal norms, including our ability to sustain a civil society within a diverse population. In this way, the mission of the Center is to explore contemporary and historical issues associated with democracy, liberty, and justice in national and international contexts. We seek to facilitate activities that strengthen democracy and the rule of law, enhance security and individual freedoms, invigorate civil society, encourage free enterprise, and increase economic, environmental, educational, and cultural equity. In that light, I am honored to introduce today's speaker, Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin. Congressman Raskin has spent his life advocating for democracy, first as a professor of constitutional law, and then as an elected official, both at the state and federal levels. You can read more details of his biography in our program, but I know you came here to listen to him, to hear him, so I won't repeat all of them. I do want to take a minute to call your attention to Congressman Raskin's long career as a constitutional scholar and law professor before he entered public life as an elected official. The Center applauds and shares his commitment to developing a sense of civic responsibility and engagement in our college students who will become our future leaders. Thank you, Congressman Raskin. A housekeeping note before we begin. First, as Dr. Jordan noted, I want to thank you for your cooperation with our campus COVID protocols. We are pleased to be able to return to hosting in-person events in a safe manner. I kindly ask our audience members to remember to keep your masks on while inside the auditorium. Second, these protocols will determine how we handle questions after the Congressman speaks. Instead of passing microphones back and forth, we will have 2 microphones on stands at either side of the auditorium. I kindly ask those who are interested in presenting a question or a comment at the end of Congressman's remarks to come up to line up at the microphones and wait until prompted to present your question or comment. We'll do our best to accommodate everyone and give everyone an opportunity, but just bear with us and we'll see how it goes. But again, I thank you for your cooperation. Congressman Raskin, welcome to St. Mary's College of Maryland, the National Public Honors College. We are honored to have you here with us today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ugas, for that lovely introduction. Hello, St. Mary's College. Hello to all the students and faculty, distinguished guests, the people from the community. President Jordan, thank you so much for this invitation and this opportunity and for showing me around today. I'm completely enchanted by your college and everything you've got going on here. So I'm delighted to be with you on Constitution Day, and happy Constitution Day, everybody. And I'm especially happy because people are always calling me up asking if I can help them get their kids into St. Mary's College. And I always say, I don't know anybody at St. Mary's College, and now I know the president, so I can help. So my plan is just to say something quick about Constitution Day and its importance. And then I want to analyze 3 different roles that I see people playing today with respect to the Constitution, and then maybe we can open it up and have a conversation about it. Constitution Day is of fundamental importance in a democratic society in the way that the Constitution is of fundamental importance in a democratic society. If you're in an authoritarian society, if you're in a dictatorship, the Constitution doesn't really make much of a difference, because either it tells the truth about how power is distributed, in which case it doesn't really affect the vast majority of the people, or it lies about it, it pretends to be something it's not, in which case the leaders definitely want to hide the Constitution from the people because it's a statement of hypocrisy and breach of faith with the public. So the Constitution is not an important part of the life of an authoritarian or totalitarian society or a monarchy or a dictatorship. But in a democratic society, a Constitution plays a central role because it is our governing social covenant with ourselves. It's a statement of what our rights and our freedoms are as persons living in this society, but it's also a statement about the powers that we enjoy as democratic citizens in this society. And like James Madison put it, those who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power that knowledge gives. If you mean to be a truly effective citizen in your society, you have to have the knowledge, the education of understanding how the society works. And that begins with the constitutional infrastructure of all of our political and social and economic arrangements. So, I'm thinking of three different roles that I'm seeing out there, or three different orientations, we could say, towards the Constitution. One is the vast majority of us who probably don't think that much about the Constitution in terms of our public commitments, and we might just think of ourselves as partisan actors. So we are Democrats, or we are Republicans, or we are independents, or libertarians, or Greens, or somewhat more exalted, we are liberals, or we are conservatives, or we're libertarians, or we're progressives, or what have you. And we don't generally think of those things in constitutional terms, and we might think the Constitution has little to do with that. Most historians have agreed with Richard Hofstadter, who said that our Constitution was written against political parties. And of course, our Constitution doesn't mention political parties, much less a two-party system, much less two specific parties. And if you read the Federalist Papers, you will see a lot of essays like the one that Madison wrote in Federalist 10, denouncing the spirit of faction, the idea that subgroups of the population will get together and subvert the overall good, the overall public interest. And the way to deal with that, according to Madison, was to try to multiply the size of the country, to extend it over such a large sphere that particular tyrannical majorities in particular places won't come to dominate and control everybody else. And then with the separation of powers and the distribution of powers, we're able somehow to diminish the danger of particular factions gaining control over government and tyrannizing everybody else. So there was no love of the idea of political parties and factions, and that was expressed not just by Madison, but I think a lot of the framers. Jefferson, when he got elected president in 1800, in his inaugural address in 1801, said, "We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists," trying to rise above the idea of partisan faction. And that struck a theme that resonates throughout the centuries. You think about Lincoln saying, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies." Or Barack Obama saying, "We're not the red states of America. We're not the blue states of America. We're the United States of America." I think that presidents have always tried to call us somehow above and beyond the pull of partisan commitment. And yet, at the same time, all of our presidents, going back to the beginning, and I would probably include even Washington, who was maybe our most nonpartisan or supra-partisan president, but all of them certainly since Adams and Jefferson all the way through Obama and, of course, Trump, all of them were passionate partisan actors who used political parties to advance their own agendas, even while sometimes engaging in that more uplifting rhetoric of getting beyond political party. But what I want to argue here is that there's really nothing to be despised about people being partisan actors. And I think if you understand our constitutional system in its entirety, you'll recognize that people who are engaged in political party activity are actually effectuating the constitutional design. What is it that gives life to political parties and gives oxygen to political parties? It's the First Amendment. It's the freedom of speech. It's the freedom to associate, the freedom to organize, the freedom to petition for redress of grievances. So political parties, in that sense, are a reflection, an expression of a free political society. The fact that people do have different views about things and different ideas, and they get together and organize in order to try to advance them. And nothing is more common, at least in my world on Capitol Hill, than people denouncing partisanship and then turning around and being complete partisan actors. But everybody loves to denounce partisanship, and I'm trying to make the reverse argument. I'd say, let's be serious about it. Let's give 2 cheers for partisanship. What do political parties do? Well, political parties educate the public. They help to organize public opinion. They help to define issues and programs for campaigns. They help to mobilize the electorate and get out people to vote. They register people to vote. And then, after the election's over, they try to translate the promises and the planks of the campaign into something approaching a coherent legislative or political agenda, okay? So that, I think that's pretty good. I mean, you could get rid of partisanship, which everybody wants to hate so much, very easily. Just get rid of political parties, move to a one-party dictatorship system, ban the political parties. You want to have partisanship. There you go. So I don't think any of us want to live in that society. So the partisanship, I think, goes with the territory. However, I will say this, and this is why I mount not 3, but 2 cheers for partisanship. Those of us who aspire and attain to public office must remember what a political party is. The word party comes from the French word parti, parti, which just means a part. Our party is just part of the whole. And when we get into office, we got to remember that we serve everybody, not just the people who voted for us, not just the party that sent us. And you might think, in the jaded, cynical way that we're invited to think about politics, that, well, that's just rhetorical because nobody does that. All the politicians are completely partisan. But if you think about it, that's not true. We know how to be nonpartisan or supra-partisan when we want to be, and I can prove that to you by inviting you to check out what we do with our constituent services. If you call, by the way, I assume I have some constituents here. Anybody from Montgomery or Frederick or Carroll County? Oh, good. Well, welcome to all, a special welcome to all of you. If you call my district office in Rockville and you've got a problem with Medicare or Medicaid or unemployment or your passport or whatever it is, we go to work for you, and the only question we ask you is, do you live in the 8th district? But we don't ask, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? Are you independent? What's your ideology? We go to work for you. In other words, we know how to be nonpartisan and how to act in that way. Now, it's harder when we're talking about the legislative arena, where there might be profound differences on questions relating to, do you support, universal daycare or not? Do you support reproductive freedom or not? Okay, I'm not trying to pretend like those differences don't exist, but I do think that we can bring the attitude, the same attitude to even the legislative context by saying, when I go to vote on something or I go to initiate legislation, I'm not doing it just for Democrats because I happen to be a Democrat. I'm doing it for everybody. And if I'm working to increase investment in maternal health in my district, it's not for the people who belong to my political party. As much as I love them, it's for everybody, regardless of what political party they belong to. And I think that that's the sensibility sometimes that we lose if we get carried away with partisanship and party actors. But what I'm trying to say about this is, don't diss the people who are party activists. I think that they're doing a lot to activate and effectuate our constitutional ideals, although not everything. Now, on the other hand, there are people who I think are undermining the constitutional ideals by essentially operating outside of the constitutional order to attack the whole constitutional system. And this has been much on my mind since January the 6th. And I think about people who identify themselves not as party actors, but as members of a mob. And Alexander Hamilton warned us about this in the very first Federalist paper. If you go read Federalist number 1, he said that he thought the principal danger to the survival of the Democratic Republic would be demagogic politicians who use their powers over a mob to attack the constitutional system from the outside. Sometimes people confuse mob politics with populism, which I think is an unjust affront, an insult to populism, which has a proud history in our country, going back to the 1880s and the 1890s. Populism was a political movement aligned, different from, but aligned with progressivism, which basically took the position that you have to put the needs and the interests and the will of the people first. And so sometimes that's confused with mob rule. But what Hamilton was saying was that in mob rule, and Abraham Lincoln really elaborated very strongly on this point in a speech he made at the Athenaeum, under mob rule, politicians appeal not to the highest emotions of the people, but to the lowest emotions of the people, to the most negative emotions, in order to mobilize an attack against the Constitution and the laws that the people themselves have adopted. And of course, the three most important words of the Constitution are the first three words of the Constitution: we the people. So you attack the Constitution, you attack constitutional process, you attack elections under the Constitution, you're attacking the handiwork of the people. Even if you think you've got a big mob of people doing it with you, it is an attack on the people when you are trying to demolish the constitutional order. So mobs and demagogues are a very dangerous combination for democracy, and especially today with the internet and the war on science and the war on facts and the war on truth that's taking place. The demagogues are able to make a direct pitch to mobs and create a parallel universe of alternative facts and alternative history, and then mobilize negative emotion against the constitutional order. That's a threat to American constitutional democracy in 2021. Now, I want to go to my third category, though, and this is the people that I would consider our heroes. And this is the realm of what I want to call constitutional patriots. And constitutional patriots are people who show us that you can rise above mob politics, and you can rise even above party politics and partisan politics in order to stand up for the Constitution. So I just sent a tweet out. I don't know if it's gotten out to the Twitter universe yet, but I nominated for my Constitution Day heroes in 2021 two people. One, Barbara Lee, who 20 years ago cast the lone vote against the Afghan war, because she said, first of all, the power to declare war must belong to Congress. Congress must be educated and have all the information about the situation, which it does not. And we do not want a declaration of war that is an open-ended, unlimited declaration of military power given to the president and successive presidents to do whatever they want with. And that was a very, very tough thing for Barbara Lee to do 20 years ago. And obviously she suffered every manner of death threat and attack, being the only member of Congress at a very tough time in the wake of the 9/11 attacks to say that this open-ended authorization of use of military force for Afghanistan is not the right way to go. And she really stood up for constitutional values as she understood them, and the framers' concept of when we should go to war and when we shouldn't. And the other person I wanted to nominate today for my Constitution Day hero is Liz Cheney, who has demonstrated to us that you can remain true to your partisan political preferences about things, but still demonstrate an overriding and overarching commitment and fidelity to the Constitution of the United States. And it has been her adamant insistence that we, as public officials, must maintain our oath of office by upholding the Constitution and upholding elections under the Constitution, even when it cuts against our party interests, that I think distinguishes her today in America. And she has been willing to suffer isolation within her party, ostracism within her party, censure within her party, simply because she believes that constitutional government is the thing that we swear our oaths to. And it is. And that's why the final performance of 43 senators, to me, was such a disappointment in the impeachment trial, because these people had sworn 2 oaths of office. One as a senator to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And then they'd sworn a second oath as jurors in the trial to render only impartial justice based on the facts and based on the law. And what are those oaths telling you to do other than to set aside your partisan commitments, to act as a constitutional patriot, to act as a patriot under the Constitution for the values and for the system of laws that unite us as a people. But there are constitutional patriots out there, and I'll close just with the thought that all of you can be constitutional patriots by continuing on the road of constitutional progress that has been really the motor force in American history. If you think about the amendments that we've added since the original Bill of Rights, there have been 17 amendments, and the vast majority of them are democracy expanding, suffrage increasing, popular government improving amendments. That's what almost all of them are, because, as you know, my favorite, certainly Republican president, if not favorite president, Abraham Lincoln, spoke of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We didn't start out that way, and Lincoln knew we didn't start out that way. We started as a slave republic of white male property owners over the age of 21. And a lot of what was taking place, as the president said, was in derogation of other people's rights, people who were here before the colonists arrived. So, I think a lot of our great patriots over the course of our history have understood that and have kept that in mind. But we didn't start out like, even with the vision of government of the people, by the people, for everyone. Jefferson had some really good language in the Declaration of Independence. That wasn't his specific understanding, but we were able to take the language of consent of the governed and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all men being created equal, to mean all men and all women being created equal, and all people being created equal. So the ideals were written down there, as flawed as the founders were written, and we were able to expand them over time. So after the Civil War, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment gave us equal protection and due process. The 15th Amendment banned race discrimination in voting. The 17th Amendment shifted the mode of election of U.S. senators from the state legislatures to the people. The 19th Amendment gave us women's suffrage. The 23rd Amendment gave people in Washington, D.C. the right to participate in presidential elections. The 24th Amendment banned poll taxes. The 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18. But you see, the whole trajectory of our constitutional and political development has been to open America up to the participation of all the people. So everybody is seen and everybody is heard, and the government is able to vindicate the equal dignity and the equal rights of each person. That process needs to continue. Tocqueville said when he wrote Democracy in America that democracy is always either expanding or it's shrinking. It's contracting. It can move in one direction or the other. You can move to something more like mobs and demagogues, or you can move to a more perfect union. And that's the choice. We have a lot of work to do in terms of our elections. We don't have a constitutional right to vote, believe it or not. We have sort of ragtag anti-discrimination amendments in there. You can't discriminate on the basis of race. You can't discriminate on the basis of sex and so on. But nowhere do you have what you find in Article 1 of the new South Africa Constitution, for example, which is an affirmative universal grant of the right to vote to everybody. So everybody gets the right to vote. And we know there are millions of Americans who still are not represented fully in government, in Congress. 3.5 million people in Puerto Rico, 725,000 people in Washington, D.C., millions of former prisoners still disenfranchised in 7 or 8 states. The Electoral College is a continuing nightmare for us. And just like we were able to improve the Constitution by getting rid of state legislative selection of U.S. senators, and we've been able to get rid of poll taxes and literacy tests and so on, the Electoral College is a continuing threat to democracy in America. And it's time for the rest of the country to follow Maryland in our adoption and initiation of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Now, I think there are 15 or 16 states which have adopted it, and we're something like 2/3 of the way there. We need 270 Electoral College votes in there. But all of which is to say that democracy is unfinished business. It's a work in progress. And what makes you a constitutional patriot is being willing to stand up for the values of the Constitution that people have fought and died for in the past, and then being able and being willing to envision a Constitution that's even greater in the future. And I know all of you are up to that task, and it's something we need to do, and we dare not fail. So happy Constitution Day, everybody. So.
Thank you, Congressman, for your insightful and thoughtful remarks. We have some time for a question and answer session, a discussion, perhaps with the Congressman. So I ask for those who would like to pose a question or make a comment to the Congressman to please line up at one of our microphones and ask your question. Please remember to keep your mask on at all times while indoors, and we will proceed with the questions. To start things off, while you get warmed up, I have a couple of questions that I have in my back pocket for the Congressman. But thinking about us as an educational institution, Congressman, what role, maybe you can elaborate some more on some of the concrete roles that students can play in contributing to the future of American democracy?
Well, I mean, if you follow my little discussion of the different roles people are playing, please don't become a member of the mob and break our windows and try to overthrow the government of the United States. That's a good start. I think, to be a party actor, whatever your party is great. I mean, because you're willing to engage with the public issues of the time. That's awesome. But I think that college students historically have played a great role in confronting issues that the party system won't deal with. I mean, when you look at the young people who created the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the early 1960s, if you look at Bob Moses, what they did in the South is they dismantled the system of apartheid, and it was not really with the assistance of the Democratic or the Republican parties. At that point, I mean, they created a movement and they merged with some of the grown-up civil rights organizations, and they changed the consciousness of the country until the parties acted with the Civil Rights Act of '64 and the Voting Rights Act of '65. So no, I'm not telling everybody to just go become a party hack, at this point. There are lots of things that you can do. I know there are lots of things that are being done on this campus where people are taking direct action to deal with the problems of our time. But please do keep in mind my call to action to you about being constitutional patriots, thinking about the Constitution itself as something that we've got responsibility for.
Sure. Thank you. So we have several folks lined up. We want to start here.
Hi, Representative Raskin. My name is Jackson. I have a question. I'm sure you've heard about the new legislation in Texas that was brought forth for reproductive rights. I know that the Supreme Court did not, act to stop it before it went into effect. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the constitutional argument for and, hopefully against a stronger one.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. The Texas law is blatantly unconstitutional. It essentially makes it actionable against lots of different people for a woman to exercise her rights under Roe versus Wade beyond 6 weeks. And Roe versus Wade, of course, had that trimester framework. It was changed in Planned Parenthood versus Casey to more of a binary system where the state could regulate a woman's right to an abortion after the fetus could live by itself outside of the womb, and it's sometimes, that's something like 2.5 months, or but they said 6 weeks. I heard the governor of New York, the new governor of New York, saying the other day that for all of the kids she's had, she didn't even know she was pregnant until 2 or 3 months, much less 6 weeks. So it's a direct attack on reproductive rights. Under the current constitutional system, they thought they were clever and were evading the strictures of Casey and Roe versus Wade by making it a system of bounty hunters where any citizen can go out and sue a doctor, a nurse, an Uber driver, a friend, anybody who helps a woman to go to an abortion clinic. And that's just a misunderstanding of the law. I think Judge Musetti would tell you. I mean, if you're going to court to sue those people, that is state action right there. And the whole system is set up by the state, even though it's a civil law system. I think the court dealt with that in New York Times versus Sullivan, where the claim was made, well, a libel or a defamation suit is not state action because it's one party suing another. And the court exploded that and just said, no, the reason why you have a cause of action and you can go to court is because the state gave you a cause of action to go to court. And so that's obviously what's going on down there with just this crazy, Wild West system where people can chase other people around and figure out what they're doing and then try to sue them on an unlimited basis for whatever, I don't know what damages people suffer with other people exercising their rights, but this is what it's come to. It sounds like something out of The Handmaid's Tale to me, but.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackson. Let's move to this side.
Good evening, Congressman Raskin. My name is Tyler, and I appreciate you coming here. I enjoyed your part on First Amendment rights and things like free speech and such. I find that stuff to be very important. Now, with all that said, we have our First Amendment right of freedom of speech guaranteed in our Constitution, but other countries such as Great Britain and Australia don't. Now we're noticing a lot of trends in those countries to roll back on a lot of rights, so people are getting arrested for things they might post online, and in Australia, or security acts are being passed that allow the government a lot more power over individuals for what they say online or even in person. Do you think that that is something that could happen here where our government starts to roll back on our rights based on what we say?
So, but I'm not quite sure what you're referring to in terms of what's going on in the UK or Australia. Up until this point, I'm not aware of anybody being criminally or civilly prosecuted for First Amendment protected expression. There's stuff like, child pornography that is not First Amendment protected, where the courts have ruled it outside of First Amendment protection, and personally, I don't think that that's much of a threat. The real issue, of course, is these are private entities, the different servers, and what rules they have adopted and what rules they're going to adopt, you know. And the traditional answer, of course, in our First Amendment is, you know, if you don't like the rules that somebody has in their church, in their, you know, private club, in their website, in their newspaper, you go create your own, you know. And if, you know, Twitter says, we don't want people inciting insurrection against the government or spreading, you know, disinformation about COVID-19, we're not going to have that on Twitter. And somebody says that violates my First Amendment rights, and Twitter says that's crazy, we're a private entity. I think Twitter's right. If you want to create your own private entity to go and, you know, spread propaganda about COVID-19 or whatever, go for it. You know, you've got that right to do it. I would defend your right against the government if the government tried to shut you down, but I don't think you've got a right to compel other people to use their free speech in that way.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Let's move to this side.
Hi, Representative Raskin. Hi, Representative Raskin. My name is Rufus. I'm a political science major here, and I thought what you said about the Electoral College, about how ultimately it's something that we can overcome and how our democracy is still a work in progress, I thought it was extremely apt. And I want to ask your opinion, seeing as I think you would have like the best take on this due to your experience. Do you believe that it's truly a realistic goal that we could sort of replace the electoral college system in America with a more direct representative system where every person's vote is counted?
Well, I thank you for your comments. I think it's inevitable. To me, it's just a question of when. I mean, if you look at the major undemocratic instruments that existed in the original Constitution, we've gotten rid of them. And I mean, if Tocqueville's right, I think there's just a hunger for more and more small d democracy. I mean, it's something that FDR talked about too, right? That democracy has no ills that cannot be cured with democracy itself. You know, the solution to the ills of democracy is more democracy. And I believe that strongly. You know, the problem, of course, is to amend the Constitution. You need a 2/3 vote in the House, a 2/3 vote in the Senate, and 3/4 of the states. So it's very tough to figure that out. The very first bill that I introduced as a Maryland state senator was for a national popular vote interstate compact, which says, let's get the states together to say we will exercise our Article 2 plenary authority over the appointment of electors, to say we will appoint our electors in our state, not for who wins in our state, but for who wins nationally. And once we have enough states equal to 270 in the Electoral College to do it, at that point it'll become operative in every election. So that's what we've been fighting for just the reason that you say, which is we should elect the president the way we elect everybody else, the way we elect governors, senators, mayors, members of Congress. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Radical idea, right? Whoever gets the most votes wins. I mean, the Electoral College has given us 5 popular vote losers as president. And it also marginalizes the vast majority of the population in every election. I mean, we get to the general election and everybody knows it comes down to 7 or 8 states. You know what they are: Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Florida, and so on. The vast majority of states are like Maryland. They're either safely in the blue camp or safely in the red camp, and there are no campaign resources devoted to them. There's no offices, there's no TV ads, there's no campaigning that goes on. All of it is soaked up in just a handful of states. And why? Is it because they're bigger? No. 3 of the 4 largest states are safe states, right? Texas is red, California is blue, New York is blue, only Florida is a swing state. Is it because they're smaller and so they're more accessible? No. 11 of the 12 smallest states are safe states where nobody goes to. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Delaware, Rhode Island. Only New Hampshire is a swing state there. No, what makes them the states they go to? There happens to be, just arbitrarily, providentially, adventitiously, relatively equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans. And so that's where all of it goes. That just doesn't make any sense. We need a system where every vote in America counts equal to every other vote, and the candidates have an incentive to go all over the country, not just to, a few hot spots. So I That is something that calls for constitutional patriotism. I mean, I remember when I first put that in Annapolis, and a number of senators came to me in the cloakroom, and they say, well, you keep talking about this like this is good government, majority rule, but who's this really going to help? Is it going to help us, or is it going to help them? And I said, you know what's going to help? Whoever gets the most votes. That's it. It's not more complicated than that. Whoever gets the most votes. And so that, to me, calls on our belief in democracy itself.
I see. May I also ask you one more thing? When do you think that we could achieve this goal of truly not demolishing, that's a strong word, of truly disestablishing the Electoral College?
Well, somebody who used to be on my side on it was Donald Trump, and he changed his position after the 2016 election. So it's unfortunately, like everything else, it's become just drenched in partisanship. So I don't know. But if you ask people today, like 70 or 75% support a national popular vote. A lot of people think that's how we elect the president. We have a lot of Americans who don't even understand how we elect the president, which is another argument in favor of getting rid of this system if people don't even understand how it works. You know, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year, like through different entities to promote democracy abroad, to promote elections in different countries. All that money spent on promoting elections, you know one thing we're never exporting, nobody ever decides to adopt in their country? The Electoral College. Nobody says, oh yeah, that Electoral College thing, that's a really great idea. We're going to use that in our country, you know? And so it's just a relic. Thomas Jefferson knew it. He called it an ink blot on the Constitution. You know, we should demonstrate that we have enough civic capacity and understanding to just make that judgment and say, there were reasons for it back then. Communications were different. You couldn't find out who won in different places. You needed to stage out the votes and the casting the electors, and there were transportation problems. That's all that is. Let's let bygones be bygones. We can elect the president the way that a modern democracy should elect a president. It's becoming a danger to us, as we saw on January 6th. There are all of these vulnerabilities and booby traps in the system which are now going to be exploited by bad faith actors. Because we can't count on anything anymore. There used to be a general social consensus, well, we're kind of stuck with this system, so let's just follow what the voters say in a state. That will create the Electoral College vote. We'll just have the governors write the certificates, the Congress will accept them, and nobody will fight about it. And now we fight about everything. And every stage is up for grabs, just like there were people who wanted to turn January 6th into another election, essentially, with violence attended to it. So it's dangerous.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
thoughts,
you.
Representative Raskin, sir.
Thank you, Rufus. Let's move over to this side.
Hi, my name is Thea. You came to my high school, Bethesda Chevy Chase High School, a couple years ago. And
I'm following you around, clearly,
Yeah.
so yeah.
It was one of my favorite memories of high school before COVID hit, obviously. And kind of bouncing off of his question of things that other countries don't adopt from this country is, how close do you think if we're ever going to get to like free accessible healthcare in this country? Because with COVID, I've just noticed how many inequalities there are with healthcare. And it's
Yeah,
not
that's
fair.
a great question. I think we're close. I mean, I'm not a specialist on this, but I think we're close precisely because of COVID-19. What did COVID-19 teach us? That everybody's healthcare is connected to everybody else's healthcare, and everybody's health is connected to everybody else's health. You know, so to me, it's just a sign of a basic, advanced, mature, and wealthy democracy that we decide we're all in it together and everybody should be taken care of. I believe in that really strongly. So I think, I think that there's a simplicity to that as opposed to what we've got now, which is just really complex.
Okay.
And one of the great arguments for just universal rights for the people is that everybody can understand it and everybody can believe in it. I mean, I've supported the Affordable Care Act. I've defended Obamacare, but there's lots of problems still in how it works. There's no doubt.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have time for just a few more questions.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay. Right over here.
Hey, Congressman. My name is Ryan. I'm a political science major here at St. Mary's.
I'm sorry, I missed that. You're what kind of major?
Political science.
Political science, yeah.
Yeah. And today on Constitution Day, the Constitution is, of course, the the longest-lived constitution in the world, which is often cited as a strength, and it is indeed a feat of continuity of government that I think should be commended. But there are also those who point out that the Constitution is, in a lot of ways, a relic of its time. The founders were, as you mentioned, the leaders of a white slaveholder republic, and many of the issues that face our country today wouldn't have been legible to them, like internet issues, abortion, welfare matters. And there are constitutions, mostly in Europe, that also guarantee these sort of more fundamental economic rights, in addition to political ones, like the right to housing, the right to have a job. Do you feel that the time will come when this nation needs an entirely new constitution? And do you feel as though in these times of gridlock, we have the will to do that?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I remember I once took a philosophy class when I was in college about if you've got a ship and every plank in the ship is replaced over time, at the end of it, you still have the same ship if there's nothing new from, you know. And that's more the way I think of it. I don't know that, I certainly would not support scrapping the Constitution. I mean, I think that's kind of what we were up against on January 6th. People are just saying, let's just ignore the Constitution and choose the president who we, the mob, want, you know? So I don't believe in that. But I do agree with you that it's an evolutionary dynamic process. The Constitution we have today is not the same Constitution it was in 1787. And it's a much better Constitution, and it reflects a lot of the historical struggles that the American people have been involved in. And I think that there will be great changes to it and great additions to it. But there's some, you know, wonderful stuff that was in the original Constitution. I mean, what was the real radicalism of the American Constitution when it was written? The separation of church and state. I mean, up until then, every society had organized government around the idea that there would be an official church connected to it, and our founders, flawed though they were, Jefferson and Madison and Adams and Ben Franklin and Tom Paine, and some of them were truly great. They rebelled against centuries of theocracy and holy wars and the religious wars in Europe and witchcraft trials and Inquisition, all of that. They threw all that away, and they said, we're going to put government on a secular principle. We're going to anchor it in the Enlightenment and in the development of science and facts. And when people get together in Congress and in legislatures, they should be talking about empirically what can be done to improve the lot of humanity in a utilitarian way, what can be done. And everybody in their own life can decide how to pray and how to worship, and will protect people's free exercise, but we will have no establishment of religion. Sometimes the establishment and the free exercise clauses are taught as being in tension with each other, and I never really understood that because I see them as completely complementary and enhancing of the same value, which is we want a government that is a secular thing that advances the common good, and we want people to be able to worship and believe as they please, or not at all if they don't want to. And the worst threat to people's free exercise of religion is one religious sect seizing state power and then imposing its views on everybody else. That's why I think one of the greatest Supreme Court decisions of all time was Engel versus Vitale in 1962, which struck down compulsory prayer in the public schools of New York. It was brought by a group of Catholic families who were saying, you know, there was a King James Version Protestant prayer that was being, you know, legislated across the state for everybody, and they said it violated the Establishment Clause to do it. And to this day, my colleagues will get up on the House floor and start railing about how this is an assault on religious freedom, and how the Supreme Court banned prayer in the public schools. I always get up and I remind them, it didn't ban prayer in the public schools. You know, as long as there are pop math quizzes, there will be prayer in the public schools. Anybody can pray whenever they want. It's just that the government can't force you to pray in the way that the government wants you to pray, and can't dictate to you the content of your prayers. So there were very important breakthroughs in that Enlightenment Constitution, including the separation of powers. But if you permit me one more minute, I want to challenge one other myth that's out there about 3 co-equal branches. And here my beloved Democratic colleagues are often the worst offenders. They'll get up, like, during the Trump administration, they'd say, Mr. President, you've got to stop that. We are a co-equal branch of government. And I just wanted to scream and say, get up off your knees and stop whining. We're not a co-equal branch of government. Congress is the dominant and primary branch of the government. If you look at how the Constitution is shaped, with Article 1, having the powers of Congress, and Article 2, the President, and Article 3, the Supreme Court, why is Article 1 where it is? Why is the Congress first? Because we represent the people. Look at the structure of the Constitution. You get the preamble. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and reserve to ourselves and our posterity the blessings of liberty, do hereby ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. And the very next sentence is Article 1. All legislative powers are vested in the Congress of the United States. The power of the people to create the country, to establish the Constitution, flowed right into the Congress. And then you get 37 paragraphs outlining all the powers of Congress: the power to declare war, the power to coin money, the power to regulate commerce internationally and nationally, the power of budgets, the power of tax, and on and on and on. And then in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, all other powers necessary and proper to the execution of the foregoing powers. It's a huge grant of power. Then you get to Article 2, the President. And under the Articles of Confederation, we didn't even have a president. So that was added in the Constitution. 4 short sections. The 4th section is what? How to impeach a president for high crimes and misdemeanors against the people, because we were a nation conceived in revolutionary insurgency against kings, against the idea that one person should govern everybody else. So we could impeach people for treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. And then the rest of it is stating the president's true job. And what is the president's true job? Well, commander-in-chief, not of the country, not even of the military forces, the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy and the militias when called into actual service. And then what's the heart of the president's job? To take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And if the president doesn't do that, then you evict, you eject, you reject, you impeach, you remove, you disqualify, you get rid of them. Why is it that Congress has the power to impeach the president and the president doesn't have the power to impeach Congress? The framers set it up like that because we have more faith in the people and the people's representatives than we do in what any one individual, even the greatest person in the country, might do because of the lure and the trappings of power and wealth attendant to high office, right? Well, they got that right. So they did separate powers, but I don't think that they made the 3 branches co-equal. I think they made Congress the dominant and primary branch, but we're going to have to claw our power back. A lot of Congresses have given a lot of power away, and the growth of the national security state has meant that the president has ended up with a lot more power than Congress has in different ways, and that's dangerous, I think all of us can see. Anyway, now you guys got me started, but thank you for having me on Constitution Day. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman. Before we conclude our program today, I'd like to take this opportunity to inform the audience of a couple of activities that the Center for the Study of Democracy is sponsoring. We have promotional materials of our Media Literacy, Civic Engagement, and Democracy project that's co-sponsored with the St. Mary's College Library. Please pick one. Please pick up a flyer on your way out. And also mark your calendars. November 8th, the center will host Yamiche Alcindor of PBS NewsHour, White House correspondent, and host of Washington Week. On November 8th, she will deliver the Benjamin Bradley Distinguished Lecture in Journalism. So please mark your calendars, and we invite you to join us. With that, Congressman Raskin, thank you very much. It was a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you so
Hope
much.
to see you soon.
Thank you.